Welcome to Radio Primavera Sound here at Primavera Club, where we're discovering and meeting so many emerging artists, and some have been around already quite a bit. They've been touring, they've been setting the world on fire with their particular brands of styles of music, and all the way from down under, from Australia, we have the pleasure of having with us Jen Cloher. What a pleasure to have someone who's traveled from so far away.
It's a good 26 hours on a plane, so yeah, it's a bit of a trip, but it's worth it because I get to hang out in Madrid and Barcelona, so I'm not complaining.
You played Madrid last night. How was that?
It was great, yeah, it was great. And then I jumped on a train.
On the fast train?
On the fast train to Barcelona, up early this morning, and I've already played my show today. I played a 2 o'clock show. It was really lovely. Yeah, attentive crowd. It's raining. I don't know if people can hear that, but you know, it was cozy. It was a cozy vibe.
And how does it feel to be touring without your band? I mean, do you miss them? Has it been a complicated rehearsal trying to, bring to life the songs that you do usually with a band on your own?
Yeah, it's a different show. So I play a lot of songs that I wouldn't normally play with my band. I guess the more kind of intimate, quieter songs. And I enjoy both. I mean, playing with a band is really exciting for you as the performer because you're creating something all together and then the audience is sharing that. But when you're playing solo, it's much more about you and the audience. So I know when I go and see some of my favourite artists perform solo, I sometimes enjoy it more because you get a sense of them and their story. Yeah.
Speaking of playing solo, on your song, Numbers, I like this lyric. I saw myself in you, a narcissistic, egocentric freak like me. Is self-deprecation something you enjoy channeling in your lyrics?
Yeah, look, I think the great thing about, I guess it's more having fun, just being able to poke fun at yourself and not take yourself too seriously. And I think, just seeing that we have all of these human traits, that we're not perfect. And it's great. I love listening to lyrics and music and hearing someone being pretty honest about the fact that they're not perfect. So it's more that sort of, that thing of going, we're human.
How did the person you wrote that about feel when they heard that lyric?
I don't know.
Was there a situation? Like,
yeah.
That thing you wrote, that's there forever, That's like, she loves you, yeah. People are going to be singing that forever,
Yeah, I guess like I say, I'm not leaving myself out of it. We're both narcissistic, egocentric freaks. Who knows? I mean, I guess you'd have to ask her.
And how did you feel when you heard Courtney Barnett and Kurt Weill cover your song? Where have I got it written down?
Fear is like a forest.
Fear is like a forest, exactly.
Yeah.
How did you feel hearing a song that you've written played to by your close friends?
Yeah. Well, it's always a real honour when someone covers your song because, it's probably the greatest form of flattery is to think that a song's good enough to record it, even though you haven't written it. So it was great. And it kind of, that song was on my second album. That was out in 2009, so years ago. And it sort of revived that song. And so when I play it live now, a lot of people are really enjoying it because they've heard it on a lot of sea lice. Yeah, it's cool.
This is a question one of my colleagues wanted me to ask you. Why does the Aussie accent work so well in rock music?
Okay. I don't know. I'm glad that it does. I think that there's something about Australians that is, I guess, quite sardonic. We're sort of outsiders in a lot of way, outsider culture. I mean, there's a big, long historical reason for that in the fact that we pretty much stole someone else's country. So it always, I think, sets you up to not quite feel like you belong. And I think that sort of translates into a sort of punk ethos, where a lot of people feel outside of the culture. So I think in a sense, like, that Australian accent is a kind of weird, British convict settler accent that's sort of come out of, the last 250 years. It's weird. But, I'm glad to hear that people can identify with it. But I think, there's something about Australians that is, I don't know, we tend to poke fun at ourselves a bit. Yeah.
This is totally off topic, but last night I was watching LA Confidential on the TV when I got back from Primavera Club from partying.
Okay.
And I thought, that film when it came out, that was huge. And the two main stars are Australians playing Americans. And I think American actors must get a bit teased off, because if it's not a British actor playing the super villains, it's the Australians who are getting it all now. You've got your Hemsworths and stuff. Yeah. But anyway, no, I'm sorry. That was just a little edit that out. I mean, I don't want to. There's a lot I want to cover with you. Primavera Club is a festival that really promotes emerging talent, underground bands, especially a lot of the bands on the lineups famously and every year are bands that stick to the DIY ethos. That's what's defined indie, isn't it? Indie, independence, being an independent band, doing things without the support of a big record label infrastructure. And you teach, you also help people how to learn how to become totally independent. What does it take to become a fully independent musical artist, especially in today's landscape?
Yeah. Well, I think it was a little bit about what we were talking about before this interview started, in that you have to be, I think, really focused and take it quite seriously, to see the fact that if you're going to charge people to come and see you play or to buy your music, that you are in fact running a business. And rather than seeing that as a bad thing, it's more about working out how you can make it work for you as the artist so that you can continue to do it for years and years and years. So I guess more than anything, I'm interested in how you can make a sustainable arts practice without needing to spend a lot of money. And the great thing is that independent artists today have digital technology and the digital age. And a lot of that technology and what's available to us, social platforms, is relatively cheap, if not free. And so I think if you have something like music that people identify with and respond to, and you have something to say, just like Bradley Cooper in A Star Is Born, then probably, there's no reason, I think, today where you can find not just a niche in your own country, but a global niche. And I think that's what we've started to see happen, is that because the world is connecting and the way that people share and discover music is so much quicker and fluid, you're actually able to build a career around the world. And that's kind of cool.
Well, this is not so much a question. I'm going to put a thought forward, but so that you can comment on it. You know how back in the day when there was a record industry which was making millions, artists were getting paid maybe way too much money. You had artists like from Led Zeppelin to Jamiroquai, for instance, right? And they were buying mansions and stuff, and somehow that affected the talent, because sometimes they were just phoning it in because it's like they got a record contract and they're just putting out an album just to fulfill a contract rather than sell tickets to people who really want to watch you play. And not because you're a superstar, but because your songs mean something to people, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So how do you see the future of music now that new artists are realizing that, look, mate, there's no big fat paycheck unless you're making songs for cars, car advertisements or stuff like that. If you really want to be an artist and just do it for the sake of creativity, which is what's happening, because there's an audience on the digital landscape,
Yeah.
There's people in Finland who are listening to songs written in Australia.
Absolutely.
Without paying anything. How do you see the musical landscape with all this in 10 years' time?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's hard to sort of predict what the next 10 years will see. if we're all even still on the planet. Let's hope we are.
Yeah.
If global warming doesn't burn us all alive. But back in the world where we get to speak about the privilege of making art, I guess, you know, I think what we've seen and what we'll continue to see is it's a little bit like Airbnb, right? There used to be these big hotels, right? And then digital technology came along and was like, everyone can have a slice of the pie. You can rent out your apartment, you know. And so what we've seen is like the focus moving away from big corporations like major record labels, and, you know, more people getting to share in the wealth. So maybe you don't have as much of the wealth, but I like that. I like the share model. And I think the other thing that you just pointed out, which is really valid, is that it feels to me like we've stepped into an age where people are a lot more real. And I think that audiences can smell a rat, and they can smell if you're not authentic, if you're not coming from a place of your own, I guess, experience, you know. And I really like that. I think it kind of like weeds out the idiots and hopefully makes the music landscape, I don't know, more interesting, more political, more engaged. There's a bit more honesty there. People are looking for artists who are sharing something real.
This is where I get to quote a book I'm reading by Kenneth Goldsmith, who writes about non-creative writing. He said, "There is no more originality, there is only authenticity."
Yeah.
Which is, you know, it's all about, you know, being true to yourself, being as an individual or as a unit, as a group, no? It's like, look, we're not going to invent anything new. Rock and roll is what it is. People still love it, and we still have to keep doing it. Or rap, or any oil paintings.
Yeah.
It's being part of the generation and being true to yourself, I guess.
Yeah, and I think with that, you know, what does authenticity mean? You know, what does that actually mean? And I think in a way, to some extent, it requires you to be self and relationally aware. So there needs to be a level of self-awareness, not in a narcissistic, egocentric way, but I guess as in like, where do I sit in the world? What do I think about the world? How do I engage with the world? What do I contribute? What do I have to offer? You know, rather than constantly taking. And I think that, you know, I like that because it means that artists and people actually have to do a bit of work to find out what they're about. You can't just cruise along anymore. And I think that can only be a good thing for the world. Yeah.
Well, just to wrap up, have fun with this question, because with your answers, we're going to do some post-production to illustrate and create a painting, shall we say. I want you to have fun with it, Jen, and be as frivolous as you want to be. How would you like to see yourself in 10 years? Like, paint me the space. How do you want your rehearsal space to look like? What kind of animals or infrastructure or ecosystem would you like to be surrounded in? Would you like to be in a jungle, playing in a treehouse? Paint it for me.
Okay.
In 10 years.
In 10 years' time, I think I'd like to be living somewhere in the mountains that's also close to the ocean. I'd be open to lots of different animals, you know, like bring it. Any kind of, like, I'm really into Australian fauna, so I'd really be up for some platypus. Absolutely koalas, absolutely kangaroos, like love them. What would my rehearsal space be like? I think it'd be kind of cool to have like a space that's sort of partially open, just like beautiful breeze coming through, sunlight, all of that kind of stuff. And what would I be doing with my life? I don't know. I mean, I'd love to be, you know, continuing to write songs and release records and touring and playing with all sorts of different people and collaborating and just having a really big, fun, conscious life. Yeah.
Go for it. I see you there. I see it. I can already picture it. Thank you very much, Jen Cloher. It's been a pleasure having you here on Radio Primavera Sound and here at Primavera Club in Barcelona.
Yeah. Thanks so much. Yay.
Wonderful chat.